Can you hear me okay? Fab. Hi everyone, I'm Susan Walsh. I'm the classification guru. Welcome to Between the Spreadsheets, classifying and fixing dirty data. I know I can see a few familiar faces in the audience, so hello to you. I did bring the shoes, just in case you're wondering. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm not like the other data kids. So I really wanted to set the tone for the presentation so you get a feel for what I'm like and what this talk is going to be about. So watch this.
When you think of superheroes, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Men in tights? Women with superhuman strength? Capes? Lots of superheroes wear capes, but only one wears a coat. A data coat. By day, she's Susan Walsh, but when dirty data rears its ugly head, she becomes the classification guru. What are the classification guru's superpowers? Consistency, organization, accuracy, and trust. With help from her good friend and trusty sidekick, the data whisperer.
Hi, Scott.
The classification guru wages war against dirty data, fighting her sworn enemies. Misclassification,
Oh, is it not?
duplicate, and the typonator. It's the classification guru's job to clean up the mean streets of Excel City.
That was bang out of order.
So, when you're in Excel hell, don't let dirty data get you down. Call the classification guru.
So, that's me. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am, my background. I'm going to tell you what is dirty data. Then I'm going to tell you about the consequences of that dirty data to an organisation, possibly the people that you're working with. Then we're going to talk about how to ensure that data accuracy, or at least try to. Then I'm going to show you some quick tips in Excel on how you can maintain and spot check that data, so you can go and leave this session today, you can go back to your laptops and actually check your own data. Then we're just going to briefly touch on other tools that are out there. I'm going to share with you the dirty data maturity model, which I will explain more about very shortly. And then we're going to finish with a summary, and if you're really lucky, there will be another video at the end. So, let's talk a little bit about myself. Who am I? Where did I come from? Because if you were here 2 years ago, you wouldn't have even heard of me. So, I fell into data by accident, like I'm sure a lot of you did. I had a first business, which was a clothing shop. It failed spectacularly. I was desperate for a job, and so I found an ad online to go and do some spend data classification for a spend analytics company. And that's where I found my love for data. Since then, I have set up the Classification Guru. I am working across all industries, countries, languages, everything you can think of. I am classifying and normalizing data, also cleansing suppliers and databases. I build customized taxonomies. I also do the database and things. And I am very excited to share with you today that my book, Between the Spreadsheets, is actually published and out. And if you want to have a look at it, there is a big data book stand. They're selling it today for 20 quid. It's normally $36.99, so worth a shot. And also after this, I'll be on the stand to sign some books if you want to have a look. So this presentation will give you a feel for the kind of guide and information that you've got in there. So I'm really proud of that. But never mind that. What is dirty data? Because you're all working in all different kinds of data sets, you know, it's different things to different people. But it's things like misspelt words. I'm sure you've all seen it in product descriptions, invoice descriptions, anything you can think of. It's incorrect descriptions that don't have any relation to what the actual thing is. It's missing codes. It could be product codes, SKUs, anything like that. Could be data in the wrong columns. If you've worked with addresses, you will know you see the postcode in the city column, the cities in the town or the county, and it's all over the place. And of course, there's no standard units of measure. I work with a lot of global data sets. Your litres are spelled differently in different countries, centimetres. It's a complete mess. And then there might be currency issues as well. You know, do you even know if you're working across the same currencies in all the files that you're working with? And then formatting issues. Now this is a really good one because I did a poll on LinkedIn on Monday about what is your perfect date. So the discussion that en masse was phenomenal. Everybody's using different date formats, not just within different countries, but within different organizations. So it's a real issue when you're trying to look at data as a whole. And of course, all of that is going to lead to our good old friends, the duplicates, who pretty much appear in every single data set that you can imagine. So what about examples of dirty data? Well, as I say, I work with spend data classification mainly, so I wanted to show you a couple of examples that you would think might be really obvious to you or I, but actually have occurred. So first of all, we have LinkedIn, you know, that well-known social networking platform, that training platform, that recruiting platform. What it is not is a restaurant. So that is what somebody classified this as because the description said restaurant. Now, Abel mentioned context in his last talk as well. When you're dealing with data, it doesn't matter what kind of data you're dealing with, context is so important. So don't just look at a single cell or a single column or single row, not even. Look at the whole data set to get a picture. Because as I say, if you've got those incorrect descriptions or they're misspelled, you might not see the whole picture. And then this is my favourite, and this is another great example about why you should not assume when you work with data. So this is Tinder Corporation. So I was working for a charity here in the UK, and this came up, and I thought, well, hang on, they're not spending money with Tinder, not even for advertising, surely. And of course then I had the description, it said additional IT cabling, so I had to do a bit of Googling and digging, but eventually I found out there is an IT services company here in the UK called Tinder Corporation Limited. So it's really important to not just assume that we know what things are when we're working with data. And you know, it's also true when you're thinking about normalization of suppliers. Here's Grainger. I know I was guilty of this when I first started out. There's WW Grainger, Grainger PLC, Grainger Inc. They're actually two different companies. So again, a really great example of not just classification work, but normalization. Don't just assume that you know, double check. Use the address information, check the website, use the different context. And of course it's easy for me to show you a couple of examples, but when you're dealing with a massive data set, you know, they are not just going to jump out at you. You need to find an efficient way on how you can find them. So I'm going to show you how you can do that with something as simple as Excel later on in this presentation. So how can we try and prevent these kind of mistakes from happening? Because we all know how difficult it can be. Well, the first thing is, as I said, do not assume that you know anything. Use context, use the data. If it's classification, look at the vendor name and the description. If it's a product code, look at the product code, look at the manufacturer's code and the description. Does it all match up with other patterns within your data set? Would your company that you're working for use this product or service? It's a really good question to ask yourself. Or, you know, if it's a product that you're manufacturing, you know, does it look right? And values as well. So when we were talking about currency issues before, values can be a really great guide to help you look to know if things are right. So for example, when I'm classifying hotels, anything over say $5,000, euros, pounds, I would say it's probably more likely going to be venue hire rather than accommodation. So there's little things that you can use to help you guide and sense check your data. And hey, check new companies on Google. There is absolutely no shame in that. In fact, people are talking about Googling being a skill now. And I can tell you, it is. If you know how to do it properly, it's an art. And then, you know, once you've found that website, does the description on that website match the data set you've got? Because sometimes you could have the same company name in different countries and they're doing different things. So again, that's when context comes in, you know, check the country that you're looking for, all those kinds of things. But also, well, why should we bother? You know, does it really matter? Well, you are going to save time, or your team is going to save time fixing dirty data. It can be really costly to rectify down the line. You know, we could talk about thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds, dollars, whatever. And it can affect your decision-making process hugely. If you're not looking at the full picture, then you can't make the right decisions. It's going to impact sales, finance, production. It's going to impact that whole supply chain within your organization. You know, what if sales and marketing decide to run an extra promotion and they don't tell manufacturing? And then procurement don't know to buy in extra raw materials, and so then you have a shortage of everything. And it's wasted money. You're throwing it down the drain if you've got dirty data and you know it's there and you're not doing anything about it. And of course, if it's personal data, you know, GDPR is a serious issue, because not only do you have to be responsible with the data in terms of security, but you have to have the right and accurate data that you're holding on these people or information. And what about reputational damage? If you get fined because of GDPR, or you know you've sent out a whole load of personal information letters to the wrong people, you know the reputational damage of that could be far greater than anything financial. And let's face it, dirty data makes all of our lives more difficult. But, you know, that's all pretty negative stuff. I don't really want to end on a bit of a downer. So actually, you know what, the positive about it is, if you do bother, you can increase profitability within your organisation. Imagine all the hours that your team are spending fixing dirty data. If they didn't have to spend all that time fixing it, imagine how more efficient your team could be and how more profitable projects could be. You know, happier your team could be, you know. It's worth thinking about. So that's what it is, and why we should bother. But what about the consequences? Because, you know, they might not be as obvious as you think. So what about reporting and decision making? First of all, there's cost savings if you're in procurement. You can find a whole load of opportunities to save some money. You can negotiate better agreements with your suppliers or even your customers if you have the right data. How often have you heard that suppliers and customers will sit down together and they'll both be looking at completely different data sets, different numbers, but talking about the same thing? It happens all the time. Who's taking advantage of who in that situation? And then there's supplier rationalization. By simply normalizing your suppliers from things like Dell, Dell Inc., Dell Software, or IBM, I.B.M, IBM Inc. to IBM or Dell, you might have a lot less suppliers. You know, I did a project for a client last year. They had 41,000 suppliers, and I normalized those down to 34,000 suppliers. That's a significantly lower number of suppliers. That's a lot of wasted accounts and time being spent servicing those accounts and records on a system somewhere that didn't need to be there. And forecasting too. If you've not got the right numbers, then how can you forecast correctly? And then, you know, that impacts manufacturing or sales or the promotions that you had planned. And budgets too. What if you don't get the budget you deserve for next financial year because you didn't have the numbers right? That's going to really hugely impact you. And then also from a data point of view, it can help you target the right customers more specifically. So if you don't have duplicates, you're not emailing or posting information to the same person or the wrong people because you have the right data. And what about shipping? Well, we've also seen things like the wrong dimensions of products being entered into a system, and then it's going to be shipped and it doesn't fit on the truck because the dimensions were wrong, and so the whole system has been planned incorrectly. You can't deliver on time, you might be subject to fees, it could, you know, or missing codes, you know, that might even impact things. So there's a whole range of things here. And it also affects analytics too. So this is a list of unnormalized suppliers here. We know we've got the usual suspects, Hilton, IBM, PwC. When these are normalized, actually guess what? We've only got 4 suppliers, and that value with PwC has significantly grown. So, then there's technology implementation. And data cleansing is so often neglected before software or new systems are implemented. I'm sure many of you, I've seen nodding heads, I'm sure you've experienced the pain of trying to get something to work post-implementation when the data's wrong. These errors tend to only be discovered post-implementation. By then, it's kind of too late. Staff are going to lose faith in the data, they're going to be disengaged, they're going to claim it doesn't work, they're not going to be interested, they're going to go back to their Excel spreadsheets. It's going to cost you a shed load of money to fix. We're talking possibly more than the implementation itself. And then you have to hope that staff are going to adopt this technology, because just because you fix it and it's right now doesn't mean they're going to trust it. And quite often, I've heard of stories of millions of dollars of projects being abandoned because they just couldn't make it work. And then we all know AI is the big word, machine learning, it is the future, and yes, it is great, but it's great on specific tasks. Again, you've got to clean and prepare that data beforehand. AI is learning from training data sets, so if you've given it rubbish, it's going to learn rubbish. If you haven't checked that data before you put it in, it's not going to work. And it's the same with machine learning. It could be instructive coding, but if you've given someone the wrong data to learn those rules from, it's not going to work. And you're going to end up with the old adage, we all know what it is, this is a polite version of rubbish in and rubbish out. So, what about ensuring data accuracy? How are you going to do that? Well, first of all, let me tell you now, some of you might know this, but there is no quick fix, there is no magic button, there is no software in the world that is going to magically fix your dirty data. Let's be honest about that. New data, unseen data, needs to be looked at by a person, and not just any old person, but preferably someone with knowledge in the area that data is in. And we have to get the whole organisation involved. It's everybody's responsibility to make sure that data is right, because most of the people that work with data are not data professionals, but they're the ones that are inputting that dirty data in the first place, from the receptionist to the sales and marketing people who are contaminating that lovely CRM system with multiple versions of the same name and a slight variation. And when you do have everybody on board, agree those standard common terms and processes so that everybody's working the same way. It's going to help minimize those errors. And if it is wrong, it's so much easier to fix something that's wrong when everybody's done something the same that's wrong than a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of the next thing. And this is the bit that always gets left out and really frustrates me, because this is actually more important than cleaning your data. You have to maintain and refresh it. Like, you can't just fix it and walk away. That's not going to happen. You'll be back in the same position within 12 months. It's going to be dirty again. So spot checking is also really important, because guess what? You might have put that data set nice and clean and tidy when you did it, but over time someone's accidentally deleted something, someone's cut and paste over it, someone has an opinion that it should be something different. So you have to go and check and maintain that consistency. And how can you do that? Well, I tell you right now, you need to make sure your data has its coat on. So what that means is, you need consistent data. So again, it's those standard terms, those standard formats, those standard processes. Get everybody working the same way, and it's going to make things a lot easier for you. But of course, it has to be organized as well. So just think of your data like a messy wardrobe. You've thrown your favorite top in there, and you go back to get it, and you can't find it. You have to rummage through. It's creased. Got to iron it. It's a pain. It's taken more time than it needed to be. Data is exactly the same. You can organize your data just like your wardrobe. If you'd had it tidied by different types of clothing, even color, if you're that way inclined, you could just go in and get it. Data's the same, split it up by country, by region, by category, by department, by division, by anything you want. It could be, product data or business data or financial data. It could be anything. But it's going to help you find what you need far more quickly. I mean, how often have you heard it taking like days to pull reports together for meetings for senior managers? If you had it all categorized and organized, that would probably take half the time. And of course it has to be accurate, but depending on what kind of data you're working with, accurate means different things to different people. So as long as you agree on what accurate is for the specific tasks you're working on, it's really important. And then, of course, once you have those things, you have trustworthy data. So guess what? People will use it. You'll give senior managers reports, and the numbers will be right, and everything will add up, and they'll start to trust you a bit more and trust the data. So, that all sounds great, but, how easy is that actually for you to do? Well, it doesn't have to be difficult. I'm not saying Excel is an easy way to do things, it really isn't, but we all have Excel. We all know people within our organisation who use Excel. Even people who are not data professionals would be able to do this. So I've taken some classified data here. I've got the normalised supplier and the level 1, 2s and 3s. Obviously it's not going to show it the way I want it because it's Excel, so I'm going to put it in a tabular form and I'm going to remove the subtotals. And what that is going to do is give me a list of, in this case, supplier names and the categorizations. And then anything that doesn't look right as I scroll down is going to stand out. So for example, we've got Dell classified as a courier here, so that doesn't look right. So the next thing we need to do is actually fix it. So this is where it gets a bit fiddly with an Excel, but we've got some great options. If you go up to New Window and Arrange All, you can arrange those tabs vertically. So you end up with this. You've got your pivot table on one side, and then you can change the other tab to your raw data. What that means is you can change the raw data from there while looking at the pivot table. It'll change, and then what you need to do is just refresh all to update the pivot table so that you don't keep going over the same wrong information again. So, as I say, it's not the most efficient or perfect way to do it, but it's a really fast and quick, efficient way to interrogate your data. And then you could do things like add the description in, so add an extra layer of detail in and start looking at, does the classification match with the description? Or how about looking by category and then looking for suppliers that don't fit into that category? And it could be the same with product codes. You might have a standard kind of sequence of numbers for certain manufacturers' product codes or your internal product codes. And if you searched by the code first and then the description, if it was all like food-based products, but in the middle there was bleach, then that would give you an idea that something wasn't quite right. So, I often get asked about the other tools, or what tools do I use to actually do my job. And I've got to lie, it's not Excel, it's the devil. There are a number of different tools out there. My tool of choice is Omniscope down the bottom here. Visokio are here, their stands just down the hall. I'm going to be doing a little data clinic at 3 p.m. if you want to come along and have any data challenges that you'd like to ask about. The reason that I use Omniscope particularly is that sequence that I just showed you with the two tabs, I can have live aggregated view at the top of Omniscope and an editable table at the bottom, so I can just literally, and I can manipulate the data in loads of different ways that you just can't do in Excel. So it helps you really quickly spot check the data. And there's lots of tips in the book. I hate to be one of those people, but I'm just really excited because my book just came out today. This is the first time I've touched it, so I'm shamelessly plugging it, I don't care. And something else that's in the book, bit of fun, I see all these maturity models from the consultants, and they're all a bit boring, let's face it. So first of all, we've got dirty data. So that is literally, basically, You've got your underwear on for the second day. You know you can get away with it, probably for another day before you have to do something about it. But guess what? You have an accident and you get caught out. That is what this level of the maturity model is. This is the worst of the worst. You have nothing in place, no tools, no structure. Then you've got your D-class data. So maybe you're still using Excel, but maybe doing a little bit of infrequent work. Then we've got our distributed data. So, you know, things are starting to work out. Maybe you've got some coding involved, maybe you've got some analysts. Until you get to disordered data, where you are almost there. You know, you have processes in place. You might even be merging several source files together. You are almost there. Until you reach the pinnacle of dirt-free data. I'm not even going to lie, that will last for about a second before somebody contaminates it. But the dream is there. And the thing about dirt-free data is once you reach here, that's not the end. You have to keep maintaining because it takes hard work to stay at that level. So I can't believe it. We're running out of time already. So, basically, accurate data is critical to everything we all do. And there are no shortcuts when it comes to it. You have to know and maintain your data. You have to agree those common standards. You have to get everybody involved. It will make the journey and your data life and your data cleansing life so much easier. And of course, remember, make sure your data has its coat on. And if you need a little bit of help with that...
Are you leaving your data out in the cold? You wouldn't go out into sub-zero temperatures without the correct protection, so why do so many companies forget to protect their data? Unprotected data can lead to bad business decisions that cost money and put jobs at risk. That's why your data needs its coat on. This means making sure your data is consistent, organized, accurate, and trustworthy. Consistent means using the same standards, terms, and classifications company-wide. Organized data makes it easier to find. Think of it like a messy closet. It can be difficult to find what you're after, even when you know it's in there. When organized correctly, it becomes easier to find what we want. Data should be accurate, which can mean different things to different people, but at its most basic level, accurate data is correct. And finally, data should be trustworthy. This is critical. If your team can't trust the data, they might not use it. And business decisions around jobs, staffing, and budgets are all based on data, so it's got to be right. Like any code, there are differences in the quality of data services out there. If you buy a cheap coat, it might not be waterproof or protect you enough, and it won't last more than one season. If you don't invest in good quality data services, you will end up paying twice as much, if not more in the long run, to fix the earlier mistakes. If you'd like to speak to an expert about data in your own business, visit theclassificationguru.com to find out more.
Oh. And that's me. This is my LinkedIn code. If you scan that with your camera, you can connect with me if you're not already connected. Thanks very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to be at the Big Data Book stand if you want to come along and ask me any questions. Also, I'll sign some books if anyone wants any. There's also some goodies there, so get a webcam cover, some sweets if they're left. I've even got your own data coat for you. It's a poncho for if you get wet. So, you know, got all the areas covered. So thanks very much.
Could you please take